everyone's perception is different of wine. Everyone has a different palate, and there's no wrong answer. If you're enjoying it, then that is a good bottle of wine.
Welcome to StaffBuffalo's Pain Points Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Pain Points Podcast. Today I have Melissa Winkler from Winkler Samuels. She's a sommelier, and Winkler Samuels really does set itself apart. They have different wine tasting classes. They have their own wine locker. As a sommelier, she handpicks so many different kinds of wines and everything else. So can you please tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'm a sommelier, certified through Cordon Bleu Sommeliers Level 2. And then I'm currently working on my Level 4 WSET diploma. So I kind of fell into this completely by accident. But a big thing for me in my career is a foundation of education.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So then how do you become a sommelier? I mean, if there's people out there that's just, hey, I have a great nose for it. I really like different foods. I like different wines. I like to taste test. How do you become a sommelier? Why do you become a sommelier? Like, what really drew you there?
So for me, it was literally completely by chance. Before I was in the wine industry, I was actually a nanny.
Oh,
Yes. And the first time I went to Europe, I was gone for 3 months with one of my friends. And after we had already been traveling for about a month, we were in Paris like halfway through our trip. And while we were in Paris, I took a wine 101 class at Le Cordon Bleu. And yeah, so I was like, oh, wow, this is great. I'm really into this. I have like a knack for it. Like I'm really great at plain tasting. I was like, can you have a career in this? Can you go and get like a degree in wine? That's amazing. Yeah, that's kind of how it all started in 2012.
So you just realized you had like a natural knack for it.
Yeah.
You were like, well, let me explore this.
Yeah.
And that was just dove into the education part. Like, how do I get more and more into it?
Yeah.
I'm a Cordon Bleu.
Yeah. So originally when I had come back from Europe, they have I'm not sure if they have it anymore. This was in 2012, but they had a immersion course where you could do, it was a year-long course where you would study wine during the week. And then on the weekends, there were these excursions you'd do. So you went to Champagne, Burgundy, Bordeaux, the Rhone Valley, and was working every odd job to like save up for this program. And then I ended up going on a blind date with my husband.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. But in the meantime, I was like, hey, like, what is this going to be going somewhere? And if it is, I'm probably not going to be going to Paris. So I was down to the deadline. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to find another way to get my wine education. And then that's how I found WSET. Also, I did pretty much everything online. So level 1 and level 2 online. And then in the summer of 2014, I went and did my accelerated level 3 course in London.
Oh, wow.
But before I went and did this course, it was a week-long course, but usually is a 6-month program, but they accelerated it. So it's an intense week-long process. And then at the end, you take your exam. Before I went, I was like, I want to go and explore some of the best regions in France. So I went to Champagne, Burgundy, and Bordeaux.
That's amazing. Do you have a favorite?
Champagne. Yeah, just because it was like literally the first wine region I had ever been to.
These special places.
And then, so actually last February, I had the opportunity. So I go to this wine conference in the beginning of February in the Loire Valley. And I was like, you know what, at the end of my trip, rather than spending a couple of days in Paris, I'm like, I'm going to go back to Rem into Champagne. I was like, I want to be able to reflect because it was literally 10 years later of how far I've come and like really get to experience Champagne. So the first time I went, it was like saved up my babysitting money. And so I was like, I wanted to go back and really reflect on how far I had come.
Soak it in.
Yeah, soak it in. So it was definitely it was great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. What year did you do that?
So I started the process in 2014.
Yep.
And then when I got home from London, I took my level 1, level 2 through Cordon Bleu Sommeliers in Toronto. So I did the intro and then the certified exam. And those exams are incredibly challenging to pass. So it's about a 25% passage rate.
What do those exams entail?
So both for WSET and for Cordon Bleu Sommeliers, it is like wine theory, blind tasting. And then the way that it's set up is that Cordon Bleu Sommeliers is like the service side of the industry. So restaurants whereas WSET is more like the retail and education and importer-exporter side of the business.
Oh, wow. So you're really getting a full, well-rounded.
Yeah. And at that point, I didn't know if I wanted to work at a restaurant or if I wanted to work in retail. But I knew that if I was going to work in the wine industry, I wanted to be able to feel like I had a really good foundation of education.
Absolutely. That deep, deep knowledge, especially because it's so vast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you explain to me, and I know this because one of her wonderful wine classes, can you explain to me a little bit about the genesis of wine and like how the different regions started borrowing them and how to really identify the difference between a champagne and a Prosecco? What are the differences?
So the biggest thing for me when it comes to wine education is that it doesn't matter how much you know. Wine is fun, and the best part about wine is that you could study it your whole life and not know everything. That's great because each vintage is a singular expression of what that moment in time was like. So the word that describes that is terroir. So it's a French word describing it's really great wine has a sense of place. So the year it was grown, the region it comes from, the side of the hill, the soil, the person who's making it, all of those things are what result in the glass. So every bottle of wine from a vintage wine is coming from that singular year, our region. And that's what makes it so interesting. But it's complicated. And that's the best part about my job is that I will never know everything. And that's what I find so fascinating.
Ever had just like a really bad bottle of wine? I've had some that I was just like, okay, is it just because I don't know it's bad? But what is just like a tip? Like, oh, that's a bad bottle. Oh, does it the cork? Is it the smell? How do you normally?
So sometimes wine could be corked, and that means that there's a bacteria growing on the cork. The biggest thing for me is that so there are like in every other field, like music, art, everyone has a different opinion. Whereas with wine, there's this kind of culture that there's only one good style of wine. If you don't like this wine, then you're wrong. And I am a firm believer that that is not how a consumer should feel.
Yeah.
Everyone's perception is different of wine. Everyone has a different palate. And there's literally no wrong answer. If you're enjoying it, then that is a good bottle of wine. That's like the biggest thing is that it's alcohol. It should be fun. And if you're enjoying it, then it's a good bottle.
Yeah, if it makes your taste buds jump for joy, and you're going to ask based on your profile, based on what you enjoy. And I love going in and just talking to purveyors and saying, hey, I would like something that tastes like this, but isn't too sweet, isn't too tart. And it's really nice to just talk to someone instead of just going into the grocery store and grabbing a random bottle and like, ooh, it wasn't what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah. It's nice to have someone like guide you through the process.
Thank you.
And that's a big part of our wine classes. So in the shop, we carry like mainly smaller diffusers, no commercially made wines, but all the products we carry you probably are not familiar with.
Nope.
Which is why we do the wine classes, because it's nice to try the wine before you buy it. And also having tried some wine, knowing about the product in a beautiful space. We have our beautiful 5-hour Seneca tasting room, really changes the entire experience. And the right wine with the right food, really like those experiences change the entire process.
Mm-hmm. And I like the experience behind it too, because I'm the type of person when I go to something, I just want to be like all into it and learn about it as in there.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
So having the little stories about it, the backgrounds of the families that have owned the wineries for years upon years upon years.
Mm-hmm.
I love that history, and then really being able to taste that throughout. And I'm just wildly impressed when other sommeliers, for example, Nick, comes in and then you can do a blind tasting and it's like, how did you know based on the notes and the year, the location? I mean, it's wildly impressive what you can do just with your taste buds.
Yeah. So that's kind of like back to that whole thought of terroir. So wines that are from specific regions done in classic styles have like, it's kind of like when you go to the doctor and you tell them all your symptoms and they kind of like whittle their way down to like, okay, this is exactly what's wrong. It's the same with wine. Being able to describe it, the way that it looks, smells, tastes, you should be able to distinguish the grape that it is made from and the region it comes from. And that's terroir. So really great wine has a sense of place. It tastes like the region that it comes from.
So once you learn it, it sticks with you. And then you can be like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah, but it's all about building that sense memory. So like we do a wine 101 class, and the first class that I took when I was becoming a sommelier was we sat down and we had all of these different kinds of fruits and vegetables, and then like different fresh fruit, dried fruit, jams, like of each one, and then trying it up against the wine itself, and then building that vocabulary.
Oh, and that's how you understand that there's the undertones and the different notes. I never knew how you could really carry out those notes, and it's because you actually were smelling things, tasting it, really
creating that connection. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. So then, could not anyone become a sommelier, but could you really refine your sense?
Anyone can become in the same way that any kind of career anyone can become. But like, there are some people who are better blind tasters or find it easier to like remember the regions, that kind of thing. But literally anyone can become a sommelier.
So then you tell me a little bit about the pain points becoming an entrepreneur. You didn't know anything about the space besides that you enjoyed it and you had a knack for it. So then how did you create this? How did you come up with the idea? How did you and your husband create Winkler Samuels? Tell me a little bit about that.
So when I had gotten back from Europe in 2014 and I had done my certified sommelier course through Quarter Masters, I started working at Premier.
Yeah.
So a larger wine retail store. They have a huge selection, but I really wanted to get a foundation of exposure to as many products as possible. But in the process, I found that there were a lot of smaller producers who were kind of getting lost in the shuffle. So if you go into a larger big box store, you'll see an end cap with a display, what's on sale. I'm not saying those products are bad, but I am saying that most of those products have a marketing team behind them.
Yes, and they're mass produced.
Mass produced, yes. I'm not saying that they're bad. If you enjoy them, that is fantastic. But I really wanted, if I was going to open my own shop, be able to really feature smaller family-run or just like smaller producers who are making really interesting wines. So I was working at Premier and I ended up meeting my business partner, Sam Savarino.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a developer in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And he had wanted to open up a cellar. So the storage in Five Turn Seneca. And Dan and I had a roommate. We used to live in the old First Ward.
Yeah.
And she was a bartender at Lager House, and Sam owned Lager House. And he was talking about this one time at the bar, and he's like, yeah, I want to do this wine storage. And our old roommate was like, oh, you should talk to my roommate. She's a certified sommelier. Yeah. He's like, okay. And that's kind of how it all happened. It literally was by chance.
I love it. That's such a Buffalo story. Just having those conversations. Yeah, but out there just telling people, hey, I'm a sommelier.
Yeah.
And then it connects when someone has that idea. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's like literally how it all started. And then when we pulled together the business plan, we were kind of thinking through the process of like what the shop would be called. He wanted to do a wine cellar. And I said, if we're going to do a wine cellar, I would like to have a retail store associated with it. And I'd like to do wine classes. Because when I was working at Premier, I was doing the wine classes and I loved it. And I loved like being able to share the stories and share my knowledge. And that's the best part about my job, is really exploring different regions and then kind of sharing that experience.
Yeah, and I love how you curate the theme surrounding. Yeah, I wine tasting too. So if you even just have an idea like, oh, I want like sparkly wines, right? Like I want to try all the Italian regions and stuff like that. You truly curate that with all the food so that you can really pull out those senses. So yes, I enjoy the time that's spent really educating us on it. Yeah, it's brandy. Yeah.
Yeah, even so, our wine classes that we do once a week, the theme is always changing. But it is a full day process. So it's setting the room up, pouring all the wine, making the wine notes, even just selecting the wines. Each class is completely unique. So I have never done the same wine class twice.
That's awesome.
Because I'm teaching the class and I constantly want to be challenged. So I always I'm talking about the wine. I want to drink something different all the time. There's producers that we love and that we will continue to carry, but
there's go-tos, the exciting one.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about going to your shop too, is that I could just say, hey, this is what my mom likes. What do you have? And it's always something new, something unique. It's like, oh, I want a peaty whiskey today, or I want, a sweet Kentucky bourbon. And it's always something new, something different. And I get to try so many different things. I get to try the wine. I get to try the liquors. It's really fun. So I like what you got going there. So what about any kind of pain points? Like while you were setting things up, were there any delays? Do you have any employees, anything like that?
We like to say that we're a company of 2.5. So we've had a couple of part-time employees over the last couple of years, but it's really it's for the most part, it's Dan and I. And we love it. This is like we are so incredibly lucky pain points is I really so I am like a perfectionist. I don't think I have ever done a perfect class, and I am my biggest critic. And not only that, but so because Dan and I work so closely together. So the process of buying the wines is also like I'll research, find some wines if we're doing like a specific regional focus, or if I want to just do kind of so like our wine classes range from hyper focused specific regions or great varieties to fun ones. So like in the summer we do porch pounders, which are like fun everyday wines. And then like we did last week, we did a Savoie class. So like a very small region in France. So everything in between. And so I'll research, find the wines that we want to bring in for the class. But my husband, Dan, makes all the notes. So he writes so I actually don't, most of the time I'll glance at them, but like he writes them.
Summary. Yeah.
Yeah. But he is, I always say that he is never allowed to attend a wine class because I get too nervous. So he writes all the notes. He does all the back office stuff. I do all the front of house stuff.
So do you guys have like, okay, I'm going to go, literally you go to the back of the office, I'm going to hang out in the front. What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, like, we're both very passionate, very perfectionist people. So, like, sometimes we'll literally have, I mean, like, every couple has fights, but it's like, we'll, like, fight. And then it's be okay, well, we're going to put that on the shelf. We got to get back to work. It is our heart and soul.
Oh, yeah.
We put everything into the wine classes. It takes a day to select the wines. It takes an entire day to set it up and then tear it all down at the end. Like a beautiful setting. You get to learn about wine, but it is incredibly challenging and very taxing.
But you make it seem so easy. So as a guest, everything's always perfectly set up, and you make it seem so easy peasy. That's just a great time. So kudos to you for sure.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
But a lot of like so we put in so much time and so much effort. And it really is just like, it's like the shop is like my love letter to wine.
Yeah, so yes, and you went to over years upon years, and you're still going to do it as you continue to explore.
Yeah.
All of the different things you don't know yet. Yeah, pretty lovely. Now, how many layers of sommelier is there? Like how many levels, I mean?
So for Quarter Master Sommeliers, there's 4.
Oh, yeah.
So I've done the intro and certified, and then I also did the advanced course, but I have not sat for the advanced exam or the Master Sommelier exam. And I don't think that I'm going to be going down. I used to think like maybe when I was working at Premier, did I want to work at a restaurant? So the only restaurant I ever worked at was with my friend Brandon Ford at Oliver's.
Yeah.
The food is fantastic. The wine list, the service, amazing every single time. So that was my only experience. But so for me, I was working in retail and then also doing that kind of on the side. But I really, the biggest thing for me is that I love teaching the wine classes.
So take your education and truly being able to continue it in a fun way.
Yes.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah. So I'm certified also through WSET, so Wine and Spirit Educational Trust. And that's a London-based wine education program, but it really is the gold standard when it comes to wine education. So someday, I mean, I don't know when that day is, but we will be teaching WSET courses.
That's great.
Yes. So each one of the wine classes has essentially been in preparation of eventually doing that.
So you're just preparing
For the past 7.5. So, I mean, eventually, at this point in my career, I only have one more exam for my diploma.
Good for you.
So I'm working on my level 4, and it's a series of 6 different exams. And the only one that I have left is Wines of the World, which is the most complicated one. Literally all of the wine in the whole world. So the other sections are wine production and wine business, sparkling wine. You have to do it in like theory paper, fortified wine, and then a spirit section. So I've passed every other section other than Wines of the World. And that exam is set up into 2 different days. So one day is just wine tasting, and then the other day is...
And do you spit out the wine when you're tasting?
No. Every time I do, even during the classes, I only pour myself a sip because I am at work. But you want to like be able to talk through. And like, I don't look at notes when I'm talking about wine. I just I'm always just doing it off the cuff. The last exam that I took was my fortified wine exam, and it was at 9 in the morning. And we had 2 different kinds of sherry and a Madeira. And I definitely drank it because I was very nervous taking that exam. But my wine education is incredibly challenging. So I don't it seems easy. It really is not. So I started my diploma in 2019. But I was so it's all online, but then I go to Toronto to take the exams. But with COVID, that was essentially put on hold because I couldn't get across the border to take the exams. And then I got pregnant, and they only offer of the exams in June and October, and my due date was the date of the exam.
Not good time.
Not good timing. And then the next time they offered it was October. I'm like, you know what? I have a newborn baby. Still can't do it. So it was put on hold, but, I started the process up again in 2022. Yeah. So
Good for you.
yeah, only the one section left, but I'm taking a moment. Fortified wines was incredibly challenging for me.
Can you explain to me fortified wines?
Oh, yes. So
Yeah.
fortified wines are sherry, port, Madeira.
Oh,
Yes. So wines that are fortified with a base spirit stops the fermentation process. Yes. So
that's what it is.
it's because it's a style of wine. The way that it's made in which it was to preserve the wine, because before wines had sulfur dioxide put in them, the special ways that they are bottled. When they would when they go from Europe to London, the wines will literally go bad. Yes. So a way in which to be able to preserve a wine to go from one region to another, say Europe to England or to the United States or in the Caribbean, they fortified the wine with the spirit, stops the fermentation process, and preserves it. So essentially can't go bad while it's traveling.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And so it just created a brand new fortified wine.
Yes. So this was a very, very long time ago.
Yeah.
But fortified was a very, very challenging part of the course for me. I took it 3 times.
Wow, yeah.
Yes. So the first time I took it, I passed the theory, but not the blind tasting. And the second time I passed the blind tasting, but not the theory.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
Yes, it's so frustrating. But starting my diploma before I had my son, I would sit down and I would study, and wake up early, study before I went to bed.
Mhm.
And being in school when you have a child is extremely challenging. And a friend of mine's and I was like, oh, it's really challenging. It's super frustrating. She's like, yeah, but she's like, before you had a son, she's like, your life is so much more full now. I was like, that's really great. That's a great way of thinking about it. It's definitely a lot less frustrated.
Yeah. Your taste buds changed throughout the pregnancy. And
Yes. Yes.
So is that a readjustment then as well?
Yeah. So while I was pregnant, I got pregnant in September of 2020, and Wes was born in June of 2021. So during COVID, we weren't really sitting down with reps and trying a whole bunch of different wines. But Dan had to take over the wine buying because I would not even smell wine.
Was it repulsive?
Yes, it would make me sick. Yeah. And that's actually the way that I found out I was pregnant. I was I had taken I had a glass of rosé. I'm like, this is a wine that I loved. But yeah, my taste completely changed. So I that was put on hold. And in the process I had tried, so we have some really lovely non-alcoholic wines because I was like, okay, this is a problem that other people experience. So I found some really lovely wines. Letz is the producer that I really enjoy. It's a German producer that makes some really beautiful non-alcoholic wine. But the way in which they make it compared to a lot of other non-alcoholic wines is they'll fortify the wines. It's going to be a regular still wine. And then what they do is they de-alcoholize the wine. So they literally strip the alcohol off the wine. So that's why it's bone dry. It doesn't have sugar.
Because it pulled all of that.
Yeah, and then it's still a really great quality product. But while I was pregnant, because it smells and tastes like wine, I was like, nope, my body said, nope, can't do it.
And then after, did they just snap back your taste buds to what you remembered it before?
So I think I'm definitely I'm very particular when it comes to wine about what I like and what I don't like when it comes to wine buying especially. But faulted wines, it's much easier for me to find faults in a wine.
Interesting.
So as the wine, it has cork taint or has higher amounts of VA. If a wine is off, it's
You can-
a lot easier for me to identify it.
That's so...
Yeah, so I guess my tastes do change.
Yeah, it's like a super sniffer.
Exactly. Yes.
I love that. Now, do you have any goals for your organization and what you want to do in, say, the next 5, 10 years? What do you want to do with it? What do you want to be when you grow up?
So I really would love to. So I put my diploma on hold only because my son is 3.5, and to be able to finish my diploma, the Wives of the World is going to be incredibly challenging. And I want to be able to. He's 3.5, and I feel like he's only going to want to hang out with his mom for so long. So I want to really savor that.
You could savor the wine later.
Yeah. My wine studies have been kind of put on hold. But as far as where I want to be, I think that I want to just kind of be able to I don't know, feel we're not, I mean, like, you know what it's like being a mom. You're in like constant survival mode. And like the shop is essentially like my baby. So like I want to be able to grow. I want them both to grow. Just we've been really trying to grow our wine club and our wine cellar program. And I really so the biggest thing for my wine education is every time I teach a class, I want to be better than I was the last time. But then also another component that we're working towards is we're eventually going to be doing wine travel. Yes. So like curated wine.
Where you're up with around just people and then you take
Yeah.
this you.
Yeah, because that is the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like people just want to go to travel.
But like honestly, like that was for me the huge thing when I was starting to learn like, oh, do I want to be in the wine industry? And I really just wanted a job where I could travel all the time, because to be able to understand wine, you have to go to the region, meet the people, see where it comes from.
And sure, it's completely different everywhere.
Every single place.
Salt water, anywhere that it is, it's going to smell and feel and just be different. And probably meeting people from all over it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And then be able to share those experiences in our wine classes, but then also having trips where we take people on more immersive.
Because then they actually have the food too that is made to go with the wine in that region.
And then the diploma. So I mean, I say that at the beginning of every one of our wine classes that I'm working towards my Master of Wine. So the diploma is the prerequisite to the Master of Wine program. So it's the two sections. Cordon Master Sommelier has the Master Sommelier program. And then WSET is you have to take your diploma to then go on to the Master of Wine program, which the diploma is kind of a master's degree. And then the Master of Wine program is like a PhD.
That's what it sounds like. So yeah, kind of the top echelon education.
Yep. But I mean, so to become a Master of Wine is incredibly challenging. I think there's only 400 in the world. It's unbelievable. So most people in the wine industry work in the wine industry, but they don't have formal education. Which you can, I mean, Dan doesn't have any formal education. He is eventually going to be finishing up his WSET, but in spirits.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, I think he does all the spirit buying for the shop and I do all the wine. But most people that I work with don't have a formal education, and Dan doesn't have it, and he knows a ton about wine.
Yes.
So you don't have to have education to work in the wine industry. But for me, it's a huge thing. Yeah, so like it's something that I have always focused on.
Yeah, and I love that it's because it's not the same thing every day. It's not the same. You're just bringing the same exact bottle. Like, cannot walk into your shop and be like, that is going to be the same bottle in the same spot. And that's why I like it.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to be something new and curated and something exciting that you guys are excited about.
Yeah.
Or so like it's the consumer excited.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so now, like, for me, education is incredibly important because I am dyslexic. Yes, and I think the reason why I am so good at blind tasting was I had a tutor, so that when I was learning how to write and spell, she made it multisensory. So I would practice literally like writing out letters on a bamboo mat to make it multisensory, so it easier to remember how to spell and write.
Cool.
So my education has always been multisensory, so I feel like that's why I can remember things so incredibly well, because I've always gone about it in a different way.
Yeah.
Making a multisensory. So blind tasting for me feels incredibly natural.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's you exploring things. So can you tell a little bit more about the wine cellar program that you're mentioning? Like how do people get involved with it? Like what makes it different? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So we have about 1,000 square feet upstairs of retail space. And then right underneath it, the cellar space looks exactly like this room. It is wine storage, so it's humidity and climate controlled wine cellar space. It's kept at 55 degrees and then 60 to 70% humidity. And Five Forty Seneca is a beautiful space, but incredibly unique. And so the walls that are behind us are the original stone walls. So these are the flagstone walls. This was all hand built in the 1860s. So we're technically underground. So Seneca Street is above our heads on that side. But whenever it rains, it actually puts humidity into both the tasting room and the cellar, which works to the advantage of the cellar.
Because it's just naturally doing it. Because you're naturally doing it. Just keeping it cool because we're so far under the ground. What is it naturally 65 degrees?
Yeah.
So you just lower it slightly from that.
Yep.
Which is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And so where we are, so we're close to the border and also close to the highway. So we have a large amount of Canadian customers who store their wine or have their cellars, their wine subscriptions from California shipped to the shop. We store it for them, and then they slowly take it across the border. So that's mainly our customers.
So interesting.
Yeah, so
they select their own line, and
sometimes it's a little bit of both.
Okay. And then so if someone was just like, hey, I would like you to just fill up this thing on subscription, how does that work?
So but we have a whole bunch of customers who are regional, or are customers in Buffalo. They'll have lockers that they store their collections in. And then sometimes it's like they'll pull from their cellar and they'll say, okay, you know what I like to drink. Can you fill it back up? And that's how it kind of
So they'll like maybe bring their specialty wine?
Yes. But we're the only wine storage facility in Buffalo.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So we take it incredibly seriously. So curate some like our customers' lockers, and sometimes they just have their stuff shipped here. But the reason why most Canadian customers don't have it shipped right to them is that in Ontario there's the LCBO. They're one of the largest wine buyers in the world, but they really control the products that are being brought in, and then it's so heavily taxed, so incredibly expensive.
So it's expensive when it's selection.
Yeah.
So none of it's winning.
None of it's winning.
So if they leave it here, then they can take over the jazzes per person, time or so, and they can, especially if they work here or something like that, then they're here frequently.
Yeah,
which is perfect. And then they get their tasty wines, and they're not so restricted.
Yeah.
So then the majority of wine stores, if I just go to a generic wine store, I'm not going to call them like SKUs, but like their amount of wine is pretty redundant. It's kind of the same thing. It might be kind of the Bud Light of wine, if you will.
Yeah.
So is that kind of the main differentiator? Is like, if you want to go get that relaxed wine, it's always going to be at your local store. If you want to try something different, come explore and have fun.
Yes, exactly. So I make it a point that everything that I buy is heavily curated. So because I have a really great foundation in wine education, the way that I go about buying wine is incredibly different from most other wine buyers. We have sales reps who bring in products and we'll get to try them in the shop. But a lot of the time it's me selecting the wine, saying, I want to try this. Can I try this? Or I've already had it. I go to a lot of different wine fairs and then wine conferences, and that's how I try a lot of products all at once. You get to find a whole bunch of different products, which is why our selection is so hyper focused and not something you'd see everywhere else. It's because I'm not doing what everyone else is doing.
You're finding those unique things and things going to excite people and then make them want to try another one. Yeah, and it's always something different, which is so much fun.
Yeah.
Then as you're traveling around and as you're determining what you purchased, do you typically get a selection of red and then white, or like how do you really, is it just what people buy that you kind of figure out, oh, they will like a little bit more ports or whatnot? Like how do you really keep it stocked?
It kind of depends. So the whole store is organized by region. We always so we have Europe on one side, and then each wine, the way that it's set up is that there's vertical racks, like we have the vintage view racks, and then on the ground, it's literally like it's printed on the ground, each one of the regions.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a deeper look.
And then, so we like to keep the shelf stocks like that. But then it's also it depends on the time of year and the classes that we're doing. So the classes that we do, I try and have it be like we'll do more full-bodied wines in the winter. And then it kind of goes, our Beaujolais section is filled with lots of Savoie because Savoie is very close to Beaujolais as regions go.
I don't know what those words mean.
Oh, there are two different towns in France.
Oh, okay.
So because the store is organized by region, some regions kind of like are more full at times.
Yeah.
More than others, because those were the wine classes that we've done. And you saw so we did an Argentinian wine dinner. I also follow the wine classes at the Saturn Club. I like to really throw myself into and completely immerse. Like I was doing nothing but drinking and thinking and listening to podcasts and reading about Argentinian wine for 2 weeks before that.
It was worth it. Thank you.
But it's kind of like, so people are always like, oh, what's your favorite wine? I'm like, the store is a series of my favorites. Yeah. Those are like literally all of my favorite styles of that specific region, or really great examples. So I don't always want to be drinking a super full-bodied Cabernet Sauvignon, sometimes I want more fresher white, but it kind of depends on what time of year it is, what classes we're doing. I always try and have them kind of coincide with what I'm enjoying at the moment. And then we have customers who will come in and say, oh, we know what they like to drink, and we'll select it that way. And we always try and have a diverse amount of SKUs. So like our price points more than half of our products are under $20, around $20. So anytime we do a wine class, I always try and make it that most of the wines that are selected are around that $20 price point because you want to try something you can have every day. And then there's usually like a splurge wine in the tasting.
Yeah.
But yeah, like try to have different regions covered for the most part. I try and have it constantly be changing, but then still always having the wine that we're enjoying.
I love
Domaine Fansan, this is one that we always have in stock because it's
the favorite.
a favorite. But yeah, that's how. So I do it a little bit. I do it different than everyone else does it, but I think that that's what makes us so unique.
So if it went to your house, like this is what you would have ideally if you had the biggest wine sack in the world. It's like but you can purchase it. So
Yeah.
perfect. Oh, I like that. So then, okay, random question. What about people that get headaches with certain kind of wines? How would you recommend that they say they love wine, but they get headaches with certain ones and they don't know how to really determine that? How do you suggest they approach that in general?
So another part of my wine education, like we were talking about before, most commercial wine. So wine is the only food product that when you look at the back of the label, you don't see a list of ingredients.
Oh, yeah.
So they can literally put whatever they want in the wine. And each region, so European wines, there's like a set of standards in the way in which the wines are produced. The quality of the product, I think, is so important to Europeans that there's all these rules and regulations. So we were talking about before, Beaujolais and Savoie, those are two places in France. And to be called a wine from Savoie or Beaujolais, all of the grapes need to be coming from that region and being made in a style that tastes like wine from that region.
So it's that location.
Yes. But then, so small producers, like really top quality producers, are making wine different from the way that mass commercial wines are being produced. So because there isn't a list of ingredients, when you buy wine, especially if you're buying wine at an end cap, because it's being mass harvested, they're not taking the time to create they're trying to do quantity over quality.
Yeah.
So products like Apothic Red, so they'll mass harvest those wines. You could drink Apothic Red now, you could drink it here in 10 years from now, it is going to taste the same because they're trying to make it taste the same.
Yes.
So it's more of a product.
Consistency, mass production. It's kind of McDonald's. The French fry is the same, literally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, it's someone is having a bad reaction to wine. It's not the wine itself. It's literally everything else that goes into the wine.
Yeah.
So the things that they're spraying in the vineyard. So the way that red wine is made is that you press the grapes and the fermentation process that happens with the skins. Alcohol is produced by yeast eating sugar, produces alcohol and carbon dioxide. And to get the color in wine, it's making a cup of tea. The longer you let the skins sit and ferment in the alcohol, the darker the color will be. But that means that everything that is sprayed on the grapes and ends up in the wine. So commercial producers that are using a ton of pesticides in the growing process, who are using a lot of preservatives in the wine making process, like sulfur dioxide, those are preservatives. And then they'll use, instead of aging a wine in oak to get like a smoky or a more intense flavor, they'll use purple dye number 5 and smoke like a product that's being produced. So it's kind of like if you were to sit down, if you eat fresh fruits and vegetables every day, if you were to sit down and eat a bag of Doritos, you would end up feeling really sick. And that's kind of what it's like when you're drinking commercially produced wine, is that it's got all this other stuff in it that you're probably is giving you the headache rather than the wine itself. So if you want a really great quality wine, look for things like organic or biodynamic certification. That means that a wine has to be following certain kinds of farming practices and then not using any additives in the wine making process.
Okay. So then just having a more pure product, it's not going to affect you as much.
Exactly.
Yes. And probably just trying different things. So then my question is, people say that they have more of a headache from like maybe a red wine versus a white wine. Are there like more preservatives or anything that like go into a red wine, or is there?
So it really kind of depends on everyone. So with red wine, the pesticides that are used end up on the skins. There's a longer fermentation process,
Like the tea.
Yeah, like the tea, like we were talking about before, the ferments on the skins. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Everyone is different. And it's just because I have gotten headaches from different wines before too.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm having a few kids. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then other ones I absolutely don't. So like quality wine, I don't get a headache from.
Oh, so before COVID, we would do wine classes every single week with almost 40 people. But post COVID, I like to keep it smaller.
Yeah.
So more around like 20.
Yeah.
So half as many.
And then how many people in general could you fit down here? Do you ever throw any parties or anything like that? Or is it just you wine teas?
It's just wine tasting.
Yes. And so you have and then how many people could you, if someone wanted a really big party, would they go up to 40? Or you're like,
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so each one of our wine classes is the same format. So 6 wines, curd with 6 cheeses. Perfect. Yes. But we only do wine classes. Yes. We don't do parties because we are a company of 2. We cannot handle it.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. It's a lot, especially with people's expectations and whatnot. Yeah, just say, it would become just a lot more challenging. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. Can you tell people how to come visit you?
Sure. So we're open Monday through Saturday, 11 to 7 during the week, and then 12 to 6 on Saturday. We also have an online store so you can shop anytime. And it has a list of all of our wine classes, and then all of our products are online. And I try and make it as user-friendly as possible. So each one of the wines has write-ups, what the way it smells and tastes. And then as you're going through, there's a search bar, so you could literally organize like, oh, I like late-bodied wines. Try and make it as easy as possible.
Oh, that's fun. And then especially if you're like trying to curate, even like, oh, I'm having friends over, I'm going to do charcuterie board and I need something light and fruity.
Yes.
Yeah, to pair with that. So can you tell me a little bit about the wine club?
Yes. So we have a wine club that is $41 a month. And you get 2 wines, a red and a white, or you could do both white or both red. But each wine comes with a producer profile and then a recipe recommendation.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Pair it with what you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. As a business, what would you like to really grow over the next 3?
Over the next couple of years, I really would love to grow our wine cellar program and then also our wine club. I love being able to curate a selection once a month. Like our wine club is as hyper-focused as our wine classes. So our wine club in February, we were talking about before, I did a wine dinner at the Siren Club in Argentinian focus. So the 2 of the wines that we featured in the dinner, we also featured in our wine club.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Oh, wine. So like each month is a singular expression. We always try and make it that if you were to buy the 2 wines off the shelf, it'd be more expensive. Our wine club is always a very good value.
Well, that's so reasonable too. Yeah, for $41 is a steal, especially for curated wines once a month, and you don't have to think about it, just with the recipes and everything.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you again for having us in your beautiful space.
Thank you so much.
And walking us around and everything. And definitely check out Winkler and Samuels at 500 Seneca.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Points podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us so you never miss out on future episodes.